Imagine a quaint resort town bathed in sunshine, where every corner breathes tranquility. A place where doors are often left unlocked and neighbors know each other by name. This was a location many considered a perfect refuge from the outside world's hustle. Yet, even in the quietest and seemingly safest of places, stories sometimes unfold that forever alter their very essence. In 2007, the world was shaken by one such story, one that transformed an idyllic Portuguese resort into the epicenter of an international mystery. A 3-year-old girl vanished from her own bed, leaving behind no trace. Only hundreds of questions, thousands of theories, and an unyielding pain. What truly happened that fateful night? And why, after all these years, does this story continue to grip the world, refusing to let go? This story begins with the promise of a carefree vacation. Golden sand stretching into the horizon, the gentle caress of the sun, and precisely such a tranquil resort town. Praia da Luz, on the picturesque coast of Portugal. This was the idyllic setting for the start of May 2007 for the British McCann family. Dr. Kate and Gerry McCann, both respected general practitioners, had journeyed from their home in Rothley, Leicestershire, UK, with their 3 young children, Madeleine and their 2-year-old twins, Sean and Amelie. Their accommodation was a cozy ground-floor apartment, Unit 5A, within the sprawling Ocean Club Resort complex. They weren't alone. Sharing their holiday experience were a group of close friends and their children, a collective that quickly earned the moniker the Tapas 7. Their evenings quickly settled into a comfortable and familiar routine. After a day of sun and play, the children would be tucked into bed in their rooms, while the adults would gather for dinner at a nearby tapas restaurant, located a mere 50 meters from their apartments. The proximity was key. It meant they didn't feel the need to fully secure their sliding patio doors. Instead, they devised a system. They would take turns, every half hour, making quick checks on the sleeping children. It was a well-established arrangement, one that, to them, felt absolutely secure and responsible in the perceived safety of a family resort. Little did anyone imagine, this seemingly innocuous routine would prove to be tragically fateful. On the fateful evening of May 3, 2007, this routine was irrevocably shattered. At approximately 9:05 p.m., Gerry McCann made his final check on the children for the night. All 3 were sleeping soundly in their beds. He returned to the restaurant at 9:30 p.m., joining his friends. 25 minutes later, at precisely 10 p.m., it was Kate's turn to perform the check. As she stepped into the dimly lit apartment, an immediate sense of dread washed over her. She knew instantly that something was terribly wrong. The door to the children's bedroom, which she had deliberately left ajar, was now wide open, ominously gaping, and the window, which she had closed earlier in the evening, was now suspiciously ajar. Her heart pounding, she approached the beds. Sean and Amelie were sleeping soundly, undisturbed, but Madeleine's bed was empty. The small pink blanket, tucked neatly just hours before, lay undisturbed, a silent testament to an absence that screamed louder than any sound. Kate's piercing scream, "Madeleine's gone!" sliced through the quiet night, shattering the tranquility of the holiday. Panic erupted instantly. Kate and Gerry, along with their friends, desperately scrambled, frantically searching every corner of the apartment, then spilling out into the resort grounds. Very soon, resort staff and then the local police joined their desperate efforts. In those initial moments, a universal hope prevailed. Everyone believed the little girl would be found within minutes, perhaps having wandered off or seeking her parents. But minutes agonizingly stretched into hours, and then into days. The name Madeleine McCann rapidly became a household name across the globe, synonymous with a chilling mystery. Her photograph, with her captivating eyes and that heartbreakingly distinctive dark streak in her right pupil, A coloboma, resembling a heart shape, was plastered on every news outlet, a poignant symbol of a missing child and a desperate search. The official investigation began with an unprecedented wave of public attention, but it was, tragically, marred by a series of critical errors that would plague the case for years. The Portuguese police, known as the Polícia Judiciária, responded promptly to the call, but the most crucial initial hours, often vital in child abduction cases, were catastrophically squandered. The crime scene, apartment 5A, was not properly secured or cordoned off. In the chaotic immediate aftermath, friends of the family, resort staff, and even early police responders moved freely through the apartment. This unrestricted movement inevitably led to contamination, with dozens of fingerprints and footprints potentially obscuring or destroying vital forensic evidence. Many international forensic experts would later decry these initial actions as catastrophic failures that severely hampered any chance of a swift resolution. This was one of the biggest screw-ups in missing persons investigations ever, experts would later state. Literally, thousands of trails were contaminated within the first hours. Initially, the Portuguese police leaned towards a theory that Madeleine had either wandered off on her own in the night or had become the victim of opportunistic burglars who broke into the apartment to steal valuables. The first official suspect, or arguido, as they are designated under Portuguese law, meaning a person against whom there are some grounds to suspect involvement, was Robert Murat. A British-Portuguese local resident, Murat lived nearby and had quickly volunteered to help the police as a translator. However, his overly eager assistance and nervous demeanor quickly drew suspicion. He was extensively questioned, but his arguido status was eventually lifted due to a glaring lack of direct, compelling evidence linking him to Madeleine's disappearance. Meanwhile, the British media, particularly the tabloid press, relentlessly pursued every angle, dissecting every detail of the McCann family's actions and statements. They published the most minute details, often speculative, and began to construct their own sensationalized theories, fueling public debate. The most astonishing and controversial development, however, came in September 2007, 4 months after Madeleine's disappearance. A team of specialized police sniffer dogs from the UK, named Jane and Keela, trained specifically to detect human cadaver scent and blood, were deployed to the apartment and a rental car the McCanns had used weeks after Madeleine vanished. These dogs reportedly gave strong indications of the presence of both human remains and the scent of death in the apartment and the vehicle. Based on these highly controversial findings, the Portuguese police announced a shocking development. The suspects were now Madeleine's own parents, Kate and Jerry McCann. Investigators swiftly developed a theory that Madeleine had died in the apartment from an accidental cause, perhaps an accidental overdose of a sedative that, according to their speculative narrative, the parents might have given her to ensure she slept soundly during their dinner outings. Following this supposed accidental death, they allegedly staged the kidnapping to cover up her passing and dispose of her body. This sensational and deeply distressing news exploded across global headlines, creating an unprecedented media storm and irrevocably dividing public opinion into two fiercely opposed camps: those who believed the McCanns were guilty and those who vehemently defended them. On internet forums, the Madeleine McCann case has been and continues to be one of the most discussed and analyzed topics of the decade, if not the century. Thousands of users, amateur sleuths, and armchair detectives from around the world meticulously analyzed every public step of the investigation. They weighed testimonies, critiqued police actions, and endlessly debated the innocence or guilt of the parents. Many believed the McCanns were involved, pointing to their behavior and details of their story that they perceived as inconsistent or suspicious. For example, some users questioned why the parents did not immediately report the disappearance to the police, opting instead to first search the resort themselves. Others noted that the McCanns' public demeanor, while clearly distressed, did not always align with the raw, visceral grief expected of parents whose child had just vanished. Skeptics on these forums posed poignant questions. Why would parents leave 3 small children alone to go to dinner? Was it gross negligence or something more sinister? Conversely, their staunch defenders argued passionately that, at that time, such practices were common and accepted in many European resorts, especially in perceived safe environments like the Ocean Club. They genuinely felt safe. It was a tragic misjudgment, not an act of criminality. A particularly contentious point of discussion revolved around the testimonies of the McCann's friends, the Tapas 7, who reported strange occurrences that night. For instance, Matthew Oldfield, one of the friends, stated that he saw a man carrying a child in pajamas at around 10 p.m., shortly before Kate discovered Madeleine was missing. Another friend, Jane Tanner, also reported seeing a suspicious man carrying a child away from the apartment block. This individual's description broadly matched that of a potential abductor and could have been Madeleine. However, Portuguese investigators, for a considerable period, did not seem to fully incorporate these crucial witness accounts into their primary theories, further fueling public frustration and suspicion. The McCann's decision to hire a team of top-tier lawyers and public relations experts was also viewed by some as a sign of guilt, suggesting an attempt to control the narrative rather than purely grieving. Yet, their supporters argued that any family, especially with their substantial resources, would do everything in their power to find their missing child and protect themselves from what they viewed as baseless and cruel accusations. This fierce public battle played out relentlessly on the pages of global tabloids, feeding the speculation machine and making the McCanns both figures of sympathy and intense scrutiny. In July 2008, unable to find any conclusive evidence to support their theory of parental involvement, the Portuguese police officially closed the case, lifting the arguido status from the McCanns. Kate and Jerry returned to the UK, but the indelible shadow of suspicion would follow them and their family forever. Following the official closure of the Portuguese investigation, the search for Madeleine, though no longer a police priority in Portugal, never ceased for her devoted parents. Kate and Jerry McCann refused to give up hope. They launched a massive public campaign, leveraging their medical backgrounds and public sympathy to raise millions of pounds sterling through the Find Madeleine Fund. They constantly appealed to the public through tearful press conferences, television interviews, and public appearances, circulating Madeleine's image and story across the globe, clinging to the desperate hope that their daughter was still alive somewhere. The British police, recognizing the unresolved nature of the case and the immense public interest, eventually launched their own independent review in 2011, named Operation Grange. This became one of the most extensive and expensive investigations in British police history, ultimately costing over £13 sterling. The highly dedicated team meticulously re-examined every scrap of evidence from the original Portuguese investigation. They analyzed tens of thousands of documents, conducted thousands of new interviews, and identified hundreds of new persons of interest who had not been properly investigated previously. Utilizing advanced forensic and technological methods, they even commissioned expert artists to create age progression images of Madeleine, showing what she might look like as she grew older, hoping that someone, somewhere, might recognize her. However, even these extensive and costly efforts, spanning many years, yielded no definitive breakthrough. The public frustration grew, with some criticizing the immense cost of the operation, given the lack of tangible results. In the years that followed, the case seemed to fall into a quiet, agonizing stalemate. The global media spotlight, though occasionally reignited by anniversaries or minor developments, gradually dimmed. The world moved on, but for the McCann family, time had stopped on that fateful night in May 2007. They clung to the last known moments of their daughter's life, never losing hope, always keeping a small flame of belief alive. Then, in 2020, an astonishing 13 years after Madeleine's disappearance, a truly long-awaited breakthrough finally materialized, originating not from the primary investigation, but from an unexpected source. German investigators, working on entirely separate, unrelated cases of child sexual abuse and kidnapping in Germany and Portugal, stumbled upon a compelling lead. This lead pointed to an individual whose unsettling biography and known whereabouts chillingly matched the circumstances of Madeleine's disappearance. The suspect was identified as Christian Brueckner, a German citizen with an extensive, horrifying criminal history, including multiple convictions for sexual offenses against children and drug-related crimes. Crucially, at the time of Madeleine's disappearance, Brueckner was known to have been living in a camper van near Praia da Luz and working odd jobs as a handyman in the area. He was intimately familiar with the local landscape, its hidden spots, and its vulnerabilities, having spent significant time living and working in the Algarve region. German and Portuguese investigators meticulously pieced together the evidence. They established that on the night of Madeleine's disappearance, Brueckner's mobile phone was registered as being in the immediate vicinity of the Ocean Club Resort apartments. Records showed a significant phone call was made to or from his phone at 7:32 p.m., ending at 8:02 p.m. on May 3, 2007. This was roughly an hour before Madeleine was discovered missing, leading investigators to believe this could have been the precise moment he was scouting or even carrying out the abduction. Furthermore, during searches of his various properties and vehicles, including a distinctive VW T3 camper van and a Jaguar, investigators reportedly found deeply disturbing items: children's clothing, suspicious photographs, and other objects that raised serious red flags. One of Brueckner's former acquaintances, whom he had met while incarcerated, sensationally claimed that Brueckner had confessed to him about Madeleine, reportedly whispering the chilling words, "She didn't scream." Another witness asserted that Brueckner had once drunkenly boasted about having something hidden in Portugal. Despite these highly compelling and disturbing pieces of evidence, Christian Brueckner has never been officially charged with the kidnapping and murder of Madeleine McCann. German prosecutors, while publicly stating they have sufficient evidence to be convinced of his guilt and to formally declare him a suspect, concede that their findings are currently insufficient to secure an ironclad conviction in a court of law. Brueckner himself vehemently denies any involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. His defense lawyers consistently point to the crucial absence of direct, irrefutable evidence, such as Madeleine's body or unambiguous DNA traces found at the scene directly linking him to the abduction. They argue that the prosecution's evidence remains circumstantial, and the alleged prison confession of his former friend is unreliable and lacks corroboration. Since Brueckner was identified, the active pursuit of leads has not ceased. In 2023 and 2025, police forces, including those from Germany, Portugal, and the UK, have conducted renewed, large-scale searches in Portugal. These operations have involved painstaking efforts, combing through reservoirs, abandoned wells, dense scrubland, and remote plots of land where Brueckner was known to have lived or frequented. These intensive searches, tragically, have yet to yield the conclusive results, such as Madeleine's remains, that would finally bring an end to this agonizing mystery and secure a definitive conviction. The Madeleine McCann case has transcended the typical boundaries of a missing persons investigation to become one of the most globally recognized and emotionally charged mysteries in recent history. Its profound impact resonates far beyond the McCann family. It irrevocably altered the way parents approach travel with children, prompting many resorts to review and tighten their security protocols. It also starkly illustrated the immense power and often overwhelming influence of the press on both a family's ordeal and public opinion, for better or worse. Madeleine's ultimate fate remains tragically unclear, but her parents, Kate and Jerry, driven by an unwavering love, continue their tireless efforts, believing and searching, holding on to the slimmest thread of hope. Perhaps one day, through a new piece of evidence, a forgotten witness, or further technological breakthroughs, we will finally learn what truly happened to Madeleine Beth McCann. But for now, her story remains one of the greatest, most heartbreaking mysteries of our time, continuing to haunt and compel millions of people around the world, a poignant symbol of a stolen childhood and a family's unending wait for answers.